Hey guys, Graham here with The Rendezvous, and we are jumping back into our series where we are looking at the birth story of Jesus. Today we switched over from Luke and we read the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew gives us some details that Luke doesn't, and vice versa. So today you were supposed to read Matthew 1, that's chapter 1, verses 18 through 24. If you haven't done that, it's okay. Hit pause, go read that right now. Open up your Bible app or whatever. It's totally cool. We'll be here when you're ready. All right. Now, if you did read that, this is where Joseph finds out that Mary, his fiance, is pregnant, right? And he knows this ain't his baby. Okay. So he really only has one option in this. Okay. Now, marriage back then or being engaged back then was not the same as it is now. It's a totally different culture. It's 2,000 years ago. Right? And so what would actually happen is when you were ready to be engaged, you would go through a legal process, right? You had a legal contract that said, we are going to get married. Now, you're not married yet, but you're not just dating anymore, okay? So technically, Mary became his property. I know that sounds terrible, but that's actually how they would phrase it. That's how they thought of it, okay? Mary became his property when they signed that document, when they became engaged. And because of that, for her to get pregnant now, before they're doing any of those things, all right, would mean that she had committed adultery, all right? In Jewish tradition and Jewish law, if a woman was caught in adultery, she was either to be flogged, right, that's whipped or beaten, or she was to be stoned to death, where they would literally take her outside the city and the community would throw rocks at her until it killed her. Okay? That's what Joseph is told to do according to his customs, according to his society, according to his religion. That's what he's supposed to do. But David doesn't feel right about it. Something in there is like, nah, I just don't feel right. Even though, he confronts Mary, or she comes and tells him what happens, and she probably came with some wild story about an angel showed up, and this is supposed to be God's baby, and Joseph is like, of course you're saying this, right? Because you're going to get flogged, you're going to get beaten, or you're going to get killed if you don't convince me that something crazy happened, right? So Joseph, being a good guy though, decides, you know what? I'm just going to divorce her quietly, was actually an option that he also had. If he didn't want to go through this, he could just wash his hands of the situation and he could walk away. But then an angel shows up and it says, Joseph, son of David, right? Here's one of those things we talked about yesterday in the video, that the son of thing kind of pops up, right? Joseph wasn't actually the son of David, but he was like David. He was good-natured like David, as we see this here. He was also a distant relative of David's, right? And this angel shows up, calls him son of David, and then tells him, hey, here's the real story. Here's what's going to happen, right? And then he also tells Joseph what to name the baby, right? And names in this culture meant a really big deal, okay? Your name was kind of tied to who you were become, or maybe what God's plan was for your life. So you have guys like Abraham, which means father of nations. You have guys like David, which means beloved. Daniel means God is my judge, right? You have these names that mean a lot of different things. And if you know me, if you know my kids, they all have weird names, and we have stories for each of their names. And there's part of their name that we hope will play into their character, into who they become. And that was like times 1,000 back then. All right. So David has this choice to make, right? He knows what people are going to say. He knows what this looks like, and he knows what the law tells him he's allowed to do. In fact, he knows what society is telling him to do, but he also knows what God is telling him to do. And I don't know if you've been in a situation like this where maybe the law or society, maybe your community is telling you that you should do this. You have every right to do that. Hey, everybody does this, but you feel like that's not right. You feel like maybe even God is telling you something else. Right? Maybe you feel like, hey, I know everybody posts things like this. I know everybody, retweets those things or likes those videos, but I don't feel right about those things, right? Is it legal? Yeah, it's legal. Does everybody do it? Everybody does it, but I just don't feel right about those things. Maybe you're getting bullied, and maybe it's in person or maybe it's online, and you're thinking, you know what? I know that I should retaliate. I know my dad's been telling me for months I should just punch him in the face, but I don't feel right about that. That there's something that I feel called to, even though society is telling me differently, even though I should be able to do whatever, but maybe God is telling me to do something else. And guess what? That never changes in your life. God is always going to call you, if you're going to follow him, to live by different rules, by different standards than what society tells us to. So for tomorrow's reading, we're going to go back to the book of Luke. We're going to hop back over there. We're going to jump into chapter 2 of Luke, verses 1 through 20. So Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 20 for tomorrow, and we'll see you then. Peace out.